guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. My name's Amanda, and today we're going to be doing my July reading journal plan with me. So for this month, I'm going to be using watercolors for the first time ever. I don't have any experience doing watercolors, so this was definitely trial and error. I'm showing a few of the pens that I'm going to be using in addition. I have my Pentel Touch, I think, brush pen, my Micron pen, a couple super tips, Crayola super tips. I have my Zebra mild liner, and I think that is it. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Like I said, have never used watercolors before, so this was definitely a little dicey in places. I would like to get a few watercolor lessons maybe because I like the idea of doing watercolors, but I also know doing watercolors directly into a bullet journal is tricky because the paper is thinner and so it buckles and it just makes things a little more complicated. So I ended up doing a sailboat theme this month, which I love. I just wanted something very calming, especially after this past month. It was a rough month, I think, for everybody. And so I wanted something that was going to be calming. So I did sailboats and the sea. I didn't want to do like a super under the sea nautical theme, but I just wanted a calming sailboat theme. So that's what I ended up going with. And so this is just going to be my title page and then my notes and lists page. I make a list of all of the books that I want to read this month, all the videos I want to film this month, and then I just have a little section for miscellaneous notes on things that come up throughout the month. You can tell as I'm going through and doing this water that I do not have any technique when it comes to watercolors. So yeah, it definitely looks like beginner work because a beginner did it. But you know what? It was loads of fun to do it, and I'm fairly happy with the way that it ended up turning out. I mean, obviously it could be better, but for what it is, I'm happy with it, and I am looking forward to kind of experimenting more with watercolor and what I can do. I will say the watercolor palette that I'm using is like a children's watercolor palette. I think it's an Arteza one that I just got on Amazon. I didn't want to spend a lot of money on it because I didn't know really what I wanted to do with it, and so I just went with something really cheap, and you can definitely tell they're definitely not high quality, but for what I wanted to do, it ended up working out. All right, so there's my title page, my list page. I will say that one thing I was really impressed with this bullet journal is that I did not get a lot of bleed through into the page behind it. So that was something. I will link the bullet journal I'm using down below. It's just one I found on Amazon for cheap. Can we kind of find a theme here? So this next page is going to be my posting schedule. This is my calendar page that I do every month. And I kind of decided to do the sky and then use negative space for each of the days. I'm not super thrilled with the way that this ended up turning out, but it'll work for what it is. Like I said, this month was a lot of trial and error just based off of what I thought was going to work. And some of it ended up working out and some of it didn't. This is one that I was not a huge fan of, but like I said, it'll do the trick. So I ended up doing a huge sky, just blue, and then the negative space will be each of the days, and then a little sailboat in the corner. I do end up, you'll see when I start numbering the days, I don't pay attention to what day that month actually starts on. I just start at the beginning and start numbering it. So I have to go through with some whiteout and just erase it and then go back through again and renumber everything. That was kind of frustrating, but it is what it is. Another thing I will say when I was doing the watercolors is that this definitely takes a lot more time than just doing it with pens does, because you have to wait for everything to dry really well before you can write on it so it doesn't bleed. You'll see here in a future page that I didn't wait long enough and stuff started bleeding, and so it definitely takes quite a bit longer, but I like the effect, the kind of softer tones, the calmness, like I said, of it all really went with what I was trying to go for this month, and that's why I wanted to try these methods this month. But I definitely have a lot to learn. I may look into, like I said, maybe taking a watercolor class or something like that. I think would be really beneficial because I really enjoyed doing this. I definitely could use more practice. You see me flipping back pages multiple times. That's so I can check to see if things are starting to bleed through. The paper was getting fairly wet. I was really impressed that it didn't bleed through any more than it did. You see a little bit of ghosting on the backs of the other pages, but you really honestly don't see a lot. The paper does buckle, and so you'll notice that, but that doesn't really bother me that much, especially once it's been sitting closed for a while. They tend to kind of correct itself, but the ghost, or not the ghosting, the bleed through did not bother, like it, you can't hardly even see it. So that was really great. All right, this next page is my growing TBR and my reading log. I ended up going ahead and doing my reading log the same as I did last month, where I have my reading log and my stats all together on one page, and I really liked the way that this ended up working out last month. It's easier for me to kind of keep track of which stats I've already done, which books I've already added, that sort of thing. My growing TBR list, I ended up doing a little lighthouse painting right here, and that'll just list out all of the books that I add to my Goodreads TBR throughout the month and where I hear about it, and then I use that to film my growing TBR videos. So just a little bit more of a doodle here at the bottom, or painting, whatever you want to call it. And then the reading log is just a chart that I will list all of the books that I read throughout the month and different stats that I want to track for them. Right there you can kind of see where it started bleeding through. I had to wait a little while longer to let it dry. I don't show it and you don't notice it, but I am allowing time for things to dry between pages. I'm taking breaks and going and watching TV and things like that. So this, like I said, this definitely took quite a bit longer, but it ended up working out in the end. And yes, I do realize I forgot to dot my I on growing, but it is what it is. I ended up painting stripes down here to kind of alternate every other row because it's easier for me visually when I'm writing stuff in to be able to track down the chart rather than just having a straight chart. I think it would have been looked nicer if it would have been just a straight chart, but for when I'm actually using it, it helps to have those colors in there, just to decipher between the different columns. So I ended up adding the color in. You'll see I have to check back with June to make sure that I have all of them, all of the stats that I want to track. But anyway, now we're moving on to my Reading Rush spread. This I loved. I ended up once again wanting to use some negative space, so I used some washi tape to kind of block out the space that I wanted to preserve, and then just kind of free for all on the paint and painted with the lavender and kind of turquoise colors that they use for the Reading Rush, and just kind of went all over the entire page with it, and I love the way it turned out. I'm definitely getting 90s wallpaper vibes from this for sure. But I love the way that this ended up turning out. This is, like I said, my Reading Rush spread. I'm so excited for Reading Rush this year. They just released all the challenges the day before I did this, so I had all the challenges on hand. And I will put the challenge on one side and then I will put the book that I read on the other side. I'm not putting my TBR on here because it always changes. I mean, let's get real here. I've learned that with doing spreads for readathons that I don't really put my TBR down. I just want to write down the books that I actually read because most of the time it's not the books that I plan on reading. Is anybody else like that? I know a lot of people are, but some people aren't. Some people really do well at sticking to their TBR. So anyway, like I said, this is just kind of using that purple and turquoise colors all over, and then I did a little book doodle at the bottom. So I was very excited, and I took all the tape off, and then you can see the negative space that I had there to work with. And I love this spread. I love the way it turned out. I love the lavender and turquoise colors. Obviously, you can tell I'm right-handed because everything's slanting the way that it is. But I still love it, even if it looks very 90s-ish. So I took my silver gel pen, Uniball gel pen, and did some of the swirls that kind of coincide with the Reading Rush logo, and then also used that same gel pen to do the little arrows from the challenges to the books that I will read, coloring in the doodle with a mild liner, and then I'm using a mild liner and a super tip marker to write in the challenges, but I'm using my Pentel Touch or brush pen to do the lettering. So are you guys planning on participating in the Reading Rush this year? And if so, what are some of the books that you're planning on reading for some of the prompts? Some of the prompts are really fun this year. I particularly love the read a book with the color of your birthstone on the cover. Um, my birth month is October, and I know on most birthstone charts they have a pink birthstone, but our birthstone is actually opal. And so I am going to be reading a book that has opal colors on the cover, and I'm very excited. That was very, very hard to find, but I actually had one on my shelves. I'm super excited for it. The other challenge that I love is to read a book that was the movie that you've already seen was based off of. And so I thought that that was such an interesting prompt. I love it so much because we've all seen movies that were based off of books before we read the book. And so I already have one in mind that I'm going to read for this. I'm super excited for it. But I just think that the prompts this year are so much fun. So yeah, if you are going to be participating in the Reading Rush, I'd love to know some of the books you're planning on reading. All right, and then the last thing I needed to do was my doodle here at my 2020 title page. I do a doodle every month for each of my themes, and this month I did not sketch it out, I just free-formed it, and so I just did a little sailboat, nothing super complicated. It ended up turning out well without having to doodle it first, so that was great. And yeah, I also realized that as big as I'm drawing these, I'm gonna have to kind of improvise trying to get 12 on here because I really only have space for 10. But anyway, here's my final flip through. I really like the way that this all turned out. Like I said, there's a little bit of buckling on the pages, but other than that, I think it turned out well for a first attempt at watercolors. So anyway, if you do a plan with me, go ahead and attach that link to your video down below, and I would love to check it out. And yeah, I'd love to hear some of the books you're planning on reading this month as well. But other than that, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya!